There are estimated to be around 6.7 million members of Tibetan culture, many residing in Tibet, an autonomous region of China. Significant numbers of Tibetans live in the Chinese provinces of Gansu, Qinghai, Sichuan, and Yunnan. It is thought that about 100,000 Tibetans live in India and Nepal. Tibetans live on the plateau on the northern side of the Himalayas, an independent region of China. It shares Mount Everest with Nepal. Its capital, Lhasa, is known as the rooftop of the world, a region higher than any other on the planet. Tibet is inhospitable to most life due to its inhabitable conditions. Yet for at least 5 millennia, humans have lived there in extreme isolation. Research has shown that because of the atmosphere of the region as well as its seclusion, Tibetans have developed genetic traits not found in other humans to adapt to the living conditions found in the Himalayas. But despite their isolation, their culture remains resilient. In Tibet, Buddhism is the dominant religion and central to their culture, specifically Vajrayana Buddhism or Tantrism. Tibetans are unique on the planet in that their national life is wholly dedicated to Buddhism. For them, the Dharma is all in all. Their culture is spiritual and peaceful, based on values of kindness, altruism, and hope. Strong leadership, strength of character, and an unwillingness to give up are what have made Tibetan culture resilient. They are believed to be the most courteous people with a culture rooted in equality and respect. Their Buddhist beliefs contributing to this mindset. Tibetan Buddhism is varied, interesting, and rich in traditions, coming from Indian Buddhism, Tantric teachings, and Chinese Buddhism. Most of the practices of Tibetan Buddhism were brought in by Buddhist masters from India, hence the use of Sanskrit and some Indian rituals in Tibetan Buddhism.
Four Noble Truths is very important.
Tibetan Buddhist Serkong
this is the first
Rinpoche
teaching that
explains the
Lord
most
Buddha has
fundamental teaching of Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths.
We can explain in a very simple way, and also we can go very deep in a very easy way to understand. It talks about the suffering. This is the first truth. We know suffering quite well. So, and then there is, if you don't like suffering, then we just ignore it. Is that we cannot run away from it. It will always come to you. So then it teaches you about the second truth, which talks about what is the cause of the suffering. So then this is the second truth. So then the third truth is then Lord Buddha himself says that I have achieved something that other people didn't. So what I have achieved is the enlightenment, which means the cessation of the suffering. So then this is what Buddha taught in this third noble truth. And then in the last, the truth is the how to gain that or how to practice this. So this is the path. So if we take this in our normal life, so if you are suffering, you will go to a doctor. You will go to a doctor, and then the doctor will say, this is the reason why you get sick. Then he will give you a medicine, to then we will ask the doctor whether this medicine will help me or not to stop this pain. And then doctor will say, for sure it really helps. So you take it because this is the main reason. So then you take it before and after the meal and all this kind of path is the last noble truth. So this is how I think the noble truth work, four noble truth work.
Followers of Tibetan Buddhism believe that by following Buddha's teachings, the complete cessation of suffering is entirely possible. Though Buddhist teachings are vast and difficult to summarize, contending good spirit and morality, as well as contemplating the mind and body, are the foundations of the religion, and following these guidelines are essential to quality living not only in this realm, but in the afterlife as well. Followers of Buddhism are taught by lamas, or monks. Traditionally, the title Lama was conferred only upon those Buddhist masters who had some level of spiritual attainment or enlightenment. Many of these monks live in monasteries, a building or buildings occupied by a community living under religious vows. Traditionally, Tibetans are a nomadic people because of the extremely harsh environment they live in. They must migrate to survive the winter months as resources become scarce. Living on the grasslands and prairies of the plateau in large tents known as yurts, following the green pastures with their livestock as the seasons change. Traditional Tibetan life is dominated by religion. Religion is a daily, almost hourly practice. Tibetans spend much of their time in prayer or doing activities such as spinning prayer wheels and hanging prayer flags, in practice of their Buddhist faith. The women of the household are up for hours before dawn, hauling water and wood, milking and feeding the animals, as well as making food preparations. The men, hunting or farming, tending to their livestock such as sheep, yaks, and goats, traveling across the plains with their herds, following the grass to provide for their animals. Because of limited agriculture, many crops are not able to grow at such high altitudes, meat and bread being a staple of their diet. All Tibetans, including lamas and monks, are eating meat in their daily diets. The three basic and staple foods of Tibet are butter tea, barley, and yak meat. Yak are abundant in Tibetan regions, and with agriculture being so scarce, Tibetans have found ways to utilize all parts of the yak as to not be wasteful. Tibetans often cultivate the skin and wool of yak or sheep to create their clothing or robes. Traditional Tibetan robes are known as chuba and are specially designed to identify the cultural background or region of the wearer. Many are hand-dyed and crafted with intricate and colorful patterns. Aside from cultural or ceremonial attire, Tibetans often wear clothing that is suitable for work or harsh environmental conditions. They use the butter of yaks to make Tibetan butter tea, which is consumed with most meals. It has been described as having a salty but comforting flavor, resembling more of a soup than a traditional tea. The meat of the yak can be cooked or used to make momo, a dumpling native to the Nepali regions of Southeast Asia, made of dough and filling, often steamed or fried. The dumplings are often eaten with rice or bread, with an accompanying chili sauce. However, they can be eaten alone. The barley is utilized for several bread-based dishes or pastries, often eaten as sides, such as balap, tsampa, or pita. They make many different kinds of bread, and different cultural areas make unique styles, though the central Tibetan style of bread is balip, a versatile dish. The barley can also be used for alcoholic beverages, such as beer, most common being drochang, a Tibetan wheat beer, dating back to almost 2,000 years ago.
Testilera, Yemi Latinzi Chanjuye, and Arileni logic duera, and Tiring Tanda di Rubin Museum, the street fair or soda de la Gansuning Arab Pejacunilera, the Gumze Karilana, Susu Rixung Arab Pepa Imba Zamgim, then Arangi Karisorgudulana, Susu, Rixung, Chogada, Karina, Tuglota, Ki, Tadinzu Mila, Chera, Mishemba Hagway, Kitchumure, Samudra, Kachinana. Kesi ngaranzu lungba rangze yomara ngaranzu lungba rangze medu sambalani ngaranzu ge tuglo ta dinzu ngaranzu ge matuna ani khale di mewa chagire samgudra onjin thiring ara kangsune ngara chuba da pangde dizo kyenche mila ngara khangmama jeshe ge ge ra nga phepa yin la ani nga phepa phene kham lidane ira ine nga gyagala ke gyo ye gyagala chargyo ye ani ke dinzo changma nganzu ge 아니 다국야니 칼로레 강마마 시에 개충부레 섬고도 시나 아니 미션바디저 하고 제 아란수기 릭슝다 가리네 펠게 두라 나라 온데 섬고도라
Lhasa Tibetan, or Standard Tibetan, is a dialect spoken by the people of Lhasa. Estimates suggest that the ancestral language arose around 7,200 years ago. Tibetan is quite different from Chinese, as it borrows some words from Chinese, but also Indian, Nepali, and Mongolian language. There are estimated to be about 6 million speakers of Tibetan language, whom not all are of Tibetan heritage. Because of the Chinese assimilation tactics used in Tibetan areas, the language has been slowly fading. Tibetans try to live their lives following Buddhist teachings such as the Noble Eightfold Path and observing the 5 precepts. Therefore, rites of passage within their culture are strongly religious. For Tibetan men, ordination ceremonies are one of the most meaningful events of their lives. When a young man enters the monastery, he is ordained. Before he enters the monastery, the young man must be free from debt and other kinds of social obligation. He has to visit the monastery a number of times beforehand to be accepted as a potential monk. On the day of ordination, the young man walks around the monastery 4 times, wearing elaborate clothing and carrying a candle, flowers, and incense. He removes the clothing and throws coins onto the ground to show he is leaving wealth and possessions behind, just as the Buddha himself did. The young man then enters the monastery and asks the abbot to ordain him. He puts on yellow robes. The abbot asks about his intentions and his willingness to live by the rules and standards of Buddhism. If successful, the monk is now accepted into the monastery. After ordination, the monk has to live a simple life, according to rules that only monks have to follow. He has to respect life, not steal, not lie, and refrain from sexual relationships and alcohol. Many young men stay as monks for several years in order to achieve enlightenment. They then leave the monastery to have a family. Many Buddhists value the tradition as it shapes their character and stops them from becoming consumed by greed or sin. Many Buddhists will stay in the monastery for life in the hope that their dedication will result in them reaching nirvana. For those who wish to start a family, marriage is customary. For Tibetans, marriage is a secular affair rather than a religious one. It is not expected of an individual for religious reasons, but is accepted as an important element of life. Traditionally, If a man is interested in a woman, he will seek her age and zodiac animal. With all of the information on hand, he will consult an astrologist to check for sign compatibility. If compatible, the man's family will choose a promising day and get a matchmaker to visit the girl's family for proposal, with gifts such as katag, yak butter tea, barley wine, and other items. If her family agrees, they will accept the gifts. If both sides agree with the marriage, they will choose another day to sign an engagement. The ceremony will be held at the lady's house, and family members as well as chief witnesses will participate. The day of engagement, a man's family has to send katag and other gifts to every member of the lady's family. The gifts are given to show the virtue of respect for one's ancestors, good morality, or fortune. Following this, witnesses will sign binding marriage contracts once the approval of the two families are obtained. Finally, the lady's family will hold a banquet to celebrate the occasion. At the end of the banquet, each guest will be given gifts upon leaving. Before the wedding, another auspicious day will be chosen for the wedding ceremony by the groom's family. On previous day of the wedding ceremony, the groom's side will send a suit of beautiful clothing and a headpiece adorned with jewels or beads before entering. All members of the family are expected to arrive, so the groom and bride put their best faces forwards, wearing brightly colored and intricately patterned clothing, with golden jewelry and a headpiece as the centerpiece. Once wed by a pastor, the groom and bride are presented with kata to close the ceremony. The kata being a symbol of binding and affection. A banquet is held after the couple is wed, and a dance is performed in their honor. After the wedding has taken place, all guests are given kata upon leaving. The bride and groom are then left alone to celebrate after departing their families. Tibet's rich and unique culture is reflected through their art. The specific geographic conditions along with relations with neighboring countries have influenced the development of such vast Tibetan culture. Thus, Tibetan art is an art that uses figurative and representational images to express abstraction or spiritual practice. The most notable figure of Tibetan artwork are thangkas. Thangka is a highly formalized style of painting on cotton or silk scrolls with Buddhist deities as a primary feature. They also include scenes and mandalas. They are brightly colored using mineral and organic pigments mixed with animal glue, densely illustrative and conscientiously detailed. The thangka serves as a striking centerpiece that can be appreciated by all admirers of Asian art. From as early as the 11th century, they are rolled up and carried by spiritualists to spread the word of Buddha across the plateau. A well-made thangka is believed to embody the deity, its purpose to transmit a living presence to those who view it. Though beautiful, thangkas are incredibly difficult to create, as strict rules made centuries ago must be followed to properly create a thangka. The rules govern positions, shapes, stances, and hand position. You must not get them wrong, as even being a millimeter off, measurement will ruin the painting. The music of Tibet reflects the cultural heritage and is prominently used as a means for religious practice. The most common instrument in Tibetan music is a Tibetan singing bowl, a type of bell that vibrates and produces a rich, deep tone when played. They are said to promote relaxation and offer powerful healing properties. Buddhist monks have long used them in meditation practice. Aside from meditative purposes, music is also used in ceremonial practices. During festivals such as Tibetan New Year, the music is vibrant and lively. The festival celebrates the beginning of a new year on the Tibetan calendar. However, not all of their ceremonies are this joyful. To outsiders, procedures such as the sky burial practice may seem cruel, but in Tibet, it is customary in order to free the souls of the deceased and pay respects to those passing. Sky burial is a funeral practice in which a human corpse is placed on a mountaintop to decompose, while exposed to the elements or to be eaten by vultures. If a Tibetan dies, the corpse is wrapped in white Tibetan cloth and placed in a corner of the house for 3 or 5 days, during which monks or lamas are asked to bless them and cleanse their souls. The family members stop other activities in order to create a peaceful environment to allow convenient passage for ascension of souls into heaven. The day before the burial, the family members take off the clothes of the dead and fix the corpse in a fetal position. The body is bent into a sitting position, at the head against the knees. At dawn, the corpse is sent to the burial site among mountains, then smoke is burned to attract the birds. Lamas chant sutras to redeem the sins of the soul, and a professional celestial burial master deals with the body. It is done with the intent of purification. Unfortunately, their culture is endangered, as efforts are undertaken by China in order to remake Tibetan culture into mainstream Chinese culture. Synchronization of Tibet includes the programs and laws of the Chinese government, which force cultural unity onto Tibetans. According to the government of Tibet in exile, Chinese policy has allegedly resulted in the disappearance of elements of Tibetan culture. This has been called cultural genocide. The CCP leads regime and has been occupying Tibet for more than 63 years. Chinese law enforcement invading Tibet may now host facilities that are similar to the education camps of Jinyan, which were used to indoctrinate Uyghurs and other Muslims. But the people of Tibet remain resistant and fight for their freedom.
Tibetan and Hong Kong activists in London staged a demonstration against human rights violations by China, and this, of course, was done to shed some light on the atrocities that are being committed by the communist regime that is in charge in Beijing.